Welcome to Northern Michigan Update. I'm State Senator Jason Allen, and today from the Michigan Manufacturing Association we have Chuck Hadden with us. And we're going to get a little bit of an overview of the history of the Michigan manufacturers, what they are doing as a Lansing-based lobbying organization, and some of the challenges that they're facing. We are doing this in preparation of the struggle that the Big Three are facing. Chuck, it's great to have you here, and thank you for being with us
Well, thank
today.
you for inviting me, Senator. I appreciate being here.
Tell me a little bit about what you do at the Michigan Manufacturing and the history of that
Well,
organization.
the Manufacturers Association is over 100 years old. We're 105, 108 years old now. I'm currently the president and CEO. I just started that job in September 15th, but I've been with the organization for 15 years, and during that time I've been doing lobbying and representing the manufacturers up here in Lansing, and had a lot of fun doing it.
And so tell us, who are the members of your organization?
Well, my members, I like to say my members, I only count the company as a member, so I only count Ford Motor Company as one member, not each one of their facilities. So Ford, GM, Chrysler are obviously members, but so are the suppliers, so are the other big three, Steelcase, Herman Miller, and Hayworth. So is Pfizer, so is Kellogg, so is Gerber, so is Dow Corning, Dow Chemical. We have a lot of big time names, but I'll tell you, over 90% of our members have less than 100 employees.
Really?
Yeah. They're mostly small manufacturers.
So for our listeners, who would be members up north? Do you have off the top of your head anybody that
we have a great organization up in Cadillac. The Cadillac Manufacturers Association has a number of good members up there, and we are up visiting them at least once a year.
Wow.
With what they're doing. They do some great work up there. Rex Air is a good member up there. Pull off the top of my head right
Wonderful.
now.
So
East Jordan Iron Works would be another one.
Just celebrated their 150th
I know.
anniversary.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to believe that there aren't a lot of manufacturing companies that have been in business 100 plus
Well, Ford
years.
Motor Company was about 105 years old,
Right.
so they're older than Ford Motor. Henry Ford, they're older than Henry Ford. So think about that.
Yeah. So what are sort of the things that you work on as an organization? What are what's your missions and your objectives that you work on?
Well, the mission of the Manufacturers Association is to make manufacturing very viable and vibrant here in the state. Now that can mean helping with services, or that can mean working at the legislature and working on issues there, which is what I spent a lot of my time doing. That can mean working on environmental regulations, making sure they're not, I don't want to say too stringent, but we're able to meet those standards and are reasonable to our competitor states and other competitor nations. It could mean making sure taxes are fair for manufacturers and that we're not paying too heavy a burden. It could mean working through unemployment insurance and helping pay those bills, making sure that's being done fairly.
Wow. So a real whole breadth of...
Oh, yes, very much so.
So starting off with sort of the taxes, and I know that was the Michigan business tax was a major sort of thrust of your organization.
Oh, yes, very much so.
They talked a little bit about, when they made the case between switching from the SBT to the MBT, that manufacturing, unfairly subsidized a lot of the business tax. How did your organization, what were the types of things that you were looking for to try and fix there?
Well, I will tell you that that's not uncommon for manufacturers, and we expected it to be that way afterwards, and it still is. Mm-hmm. We still pay the largest percentage of the MBT, and we paid the largest percentage of the SBT. But what we're now doing and trying to make ourselves more competitive is that we're getting a credit for our personal property that we have in the state. We felt it was unfair for us to invest in the state, put new equipment in here, bring in more employees, and then be penalized for it afterwards.
Great. So let's just, so that our listeners,
Sure.
And we've got a real broad base of individuals, what is personal property tax?
Personal property tax is the equipment that we buy for inside our plants. It could be a stamping press, it could be a forklift, it could be almost anything along those lines. And we pay personal property tax to the state for those things. It used to be everybody paid that, but then during the Depression, back in the 30s, they got rid of it for individuals. In some states, Virginia was one, they had personal property tax on your car.
Really?
And you paid that. So it's not unusual, but it is slowly going away. And in other states that are trying to become more competitive, they don't want to penalize manufacturers particularly, who are bringing in a lot of jobs and income into the area, to bring more people there or to put new equipment in there.
So that was the big problem, was the personal.
Absolutely.
And so what we were able to get done into that is an industrial classification. What were you able to get
Well, it
fixed?
wasn't just for manufacturers. There's a personal property tax credit for commercial people also. So we were able to have one for industrial and one for commercial, and and we'll pay our MBT tax, but then we will take a credit against that.
Okay.
And so we continue to pay the personal property tax, which the vast majority of goes to the local units of government. We want to make sure we're still getting the fire services and the roads and everything we need in that area. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're competitive, and that credit will go against our state business tax.
Okay, so a typical manufacturer, was there any sort of, what kind of reduction did they see on business tax?
Well, when the MBT was first finished, we saw about a 30 to 40% drop in taxes because of that credit. But then we had the surcharge added on afterwards. So that put us back to a little bit, we're a little below even, but we're still, because that was a 19%, so we're about 10% down.
Okay, well, it's a good step.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm not kicking it in the teeth. We get rid of the surcharge, and we're even further, as you've talked about, we're further down the road.
Okay. Now, you talk about sort of labor issues. What are the types of things that you've been involved? You talked about this issue of unemployment. What types of things are you working on in unemployment?
Well, most people don't understand that unemployment insurance is just like your car insurance, that you pay on your risk. If you have a lot of accidents, you're going to have a higher rate. If you lay off a lot of people, you're going to have a higher rate. And so it's very difficult for a company who is struggling to get back in because their rate for their unemployment insurance for the people they have is climbing. And I don't know if we need to find a way to get a better handle on that. It seems to be that is the fairest way, but that is a real deterrent sometimes to bringing people back into work in the state. And we need to think about how we got to look at that.
And when you say getting them back to work, does that, when you're seeing the automation, the skill sets, are you in this whole labor area? Are you working on job training, or is that how does that work in getting these people back to work?
Yes, well, in a lot of cases, it takes retraining. What we like to say is the days of coming out of high school and going into work in a factory without a high school education are gone. It's going to take at least a high school education. More likely, it's going to take a high school education and at least an associate's degree in a lot of cases, because we've become so computerized and so automated. And most manufacturers are not going to turn that machine over to somebody who was a high school dropout, because they're going to be making 2 or 3 different items out of that machine. They're going to need to recalibrate it for every one of those items. They're going to need to repair it and fix it for whatever problem. So they have to have a very high level of education as time goes on.
So going through that, what are you seeing sort of in the workforce demands, and is Michigan getting kids appropriately trained, or what advice do you have for kids coming through so that they're better prepared to go to work in factory?
Well, my first advice for all kids would be to take a look at jobs in manufacturing. I think we as parents, myself included, oftentimes think, oh, I don't want my son to go into manufacturing. He's going to be working in a dirty factory. It just isn't any good. Those days are pretty much gone. I mean, you can't have those days and have the employee rules that are out there now and have the environmental rules that are out there now. You're now, and as people have been retiring, those people are not being rehired, and machines are going in, and 1 or 2 people are taking the place of 3 or 4 people. So it's very complicated, it's very high tech, and I would urge them not to just say, I don't want to go into manufacturing. Look at the whole business. Maybe you want to go into sales, maybe you want to go into marketing, maybe you want to go into accounting, maybe you want to go into tax. All those are fields in manufacturing, not to mention management, and understanding business relationships and how you can diversify your company. Sustainability is a new word that we're looking at, and that's a whole new field that young people ought to be looking at, and we're breaking the ice on that right now.
You talked about automation. It was very interesting. I think one of your members was the Sara Lee Pie Corporation in Traverse. And it was interesting. I visited their factory, and in the 80s they had about 1,000 employees and made 6 million cases of pies. And today they have 650 employees and they make 27 million cases.
I remember I actually went to work to try to get a job there one summer, because they have a great summer job and great pay. And I remember taking a job, and you had to take these round things and put them in holes as fast as you could. And I thought, I'm a pretty fast guy. Wasn't even close. Wasn't even close to the guys that got the job. I mean, they were just speeding through it. But that's how they tested people. Now it's nothing along those lines. Now you're working a machine.